Arena returns to BBC Two shortly with a celebration exploring the phenomenal popularity of the classic fantasy The Wizard of Oz. Following the yellow brick road of real-life humour and heartache on BBC One, Esther, Rantzen and Co.
Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. If any of our viewers this week are thinking of parking their car and enjoying a romantic moment, there are all kinds of reasons not to, as you know. Actually, Rosemary Churn from Chesterfield says, don't for goodness sake do it here. Love Lane humps for 100 yards. Where's the oddest place you've ever done it?
Well, to be honest...
Yeah?
Right next to the freezer. And they've never let me in Sainsbury's since. A place you shouldn't do it is in Austria, at least not the town Ron Bean found, called Rotten Egg.
Smells disgusting. Adrian?
Yes. What? No! No! She knows something and I'm not going to... No. What?
You don't want me to say that you said the oddest place you've ever done it was in a rowing boat?
No, I don't want you to say that, Esther. I really don't.
I won't say that. Go on.
Yeah, that's your trouble. Always sticking your oar in. Anyway, I have to say, be careful what you do it in. Mrs. Dale found a builder's van that doesn't sound too comfortable. It belongs to a gentleman called Titus a Duck's Ass.
Stay with us, we have plenty of treats in store. But first of all, this week's special surprise guest star. You loved her in Are You Being Served? You love her still in EastEnders, everyone's favourite Cockney, Wendy Richard. We are thrilled to have you here. We are huge fans of yours. But I must say, as Pauline, you have a series of events, don't you?
Oh, I know. I think she's had everything thrown at her because she had the pregnant, unmarried teenage daughter. She had her own last baby late in life. She had husband have a breakdown, fake robbery, go to prison. She had a son run away, then she had a son come back and he's HIV. Mind you, there have been sad times for her. You know?
I certainly have. Mind you, Are You Being Served was a sort of quieter life, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. Do you know it's the #1 English comedy show in America?
I know.
It's marvellous because I know Molly Sugden told me when she goes over to the States, she gets treated like a queen. And so does John Inman. He gets treated very well.
I'm really pleased. Before we go too far, we've got your nook over there.
Right.
And what we've got is a lot of cuttings sent in by viewers, and you collect what you like and give us a selection later on.
Righty-ho, I will.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wendy Richard.
Later in the programme, we'll be meeting Tom Morton to discover exactly what it is he does in the bath.
Sounds worrying. And the boy who gets more posts than he can possibly handle.
Right now, our hotline's open as usual for any urgent problems you may have or fresh information about any of tonight's stories. The number, as always, is 081 752 4444.
We've told some stories on this programme in the past about neighbours who didn't get on with each other, had rows about noise or boundaries. But this week, we have heard one humdinger of a row. It comes from Janie Lombardy. She wrote to us from Coatbridge in Lanarkshire in Scotland. She said...
I haven't been able to drive my car for 2.5 years.
Because it won't start?
Oh, I bet it will.
Well then, because the tyres have dropped off.
No, not at all. I've polished it, I've yearned after it. It's a 16-year-old Vauxhall Royale. This is what it looked like new. In fact, now it's almost a classic car. It's roomy, spacious. You can do anything in it.
Rather like a Range Rover.
Moving swiftly on, 2.5 years ago, I parked my lovely Vauxhall Royale at the end of our back garden as normal.
Is that where your garage is?
Well, there used to be a rickety wooden garage there. It was there when we bought the house, but we got rid of it. So the car was just on a plot of brick hard standing. I went out for the day, came back, and found a fence blocking off the end of our garden at the back of the car and an old clapped-out ambulance parked across it so it couldn't move.
So the car was trapped in your back garden by the fence and the ambulance?
Exactly, and there it's been in our garden for 2.5 years.
How could someone have built the fence or parked the ambulance without noticing your car was there?
Well, that's what we asked Thomas Hill, our neighbour, the one who wanted to build some new houses next door to us, but we objected to his planning application and he couldn't. The one who bought the road at the back of our garden and lets our neighbour park and drive down it, but won't let us.
Well, we've actually created a little map so you can see what all this means. Adrian went up there to investigate, so he'll explain the map to us. Won't you, Adi? Here it is.
Surely will.
Now, there is, on our knees, the way the BBC likes it. Here's the Vauxhall Royale, and...
There's Jamie's house, 250.
Right, and this is the back garden and the Vauxhall parked at the end of it. Now, that is where the garage used to be, right?
Yeah.
And that, therefore, is where the ambulance is. Show us where the fence...
Yeah, and in between the ambulance and the car, he's erected a fence. All that pink area there is to show the ownership. That's Mr. Hill's.
So Mr. Hill owns all this. It is absolutely crazy thing to do, to block the car in like that. What's happened since?
Well, there's been a lot of argy-bargy since. Mr. Hill said that he would move the fence and the ambulance, but only on condition she never drove a car back there. Well, she said that's nonsense, because the only other place to park it is here, this busy dual carriageway. Well, I went up there to try and help. This is the dual carriageway. It's the main road to Glasgow. Mr. Hill lives a couple of doors away, so I thought I'd try and talk to him. Well, the noise you hear is Mr. Hill's Alsatian dog, so I don't think we'll be staying too long. So this is a completely ridiculous situation to be in.
It's crazy.
Have you approached Mr. Hill about all this?
Since Mr. Hill has bought the road, he's not been approachable, no. I have approached him through lawyers, but there's just no go at all.
So have you any idea how you're going to get that car out?
The only solution is for the council to intervene and make the road compulsory purchase it and give us an access road into the rear of houses.
Well, I think we might possibly have a solution for you.
Well, you certainly gave me a bit of... Oh, my God, no! You done? I don't believe it.
Where's the celebration? We've got to get this car out. Do you have any requests?
Let me hide.
I think your name is going to go down in Cambridge, isn't it?
I don't. Why did I do this?
You're beginning to wish you'd never written to us now, aren't you? Will it turn over after all this time? Hey, 2 years on, in you get.
Adrian, a happy ending then?
Well, not quite, because she still can't park a car where she used to. Mr. Hill wants the whole thing sorted out in court.
Well, that gives a whole fresh meaning to Hill Street Blues, doesn't it? Wendy, you've been looking into a local row, have you?
Yes, what a lot of fuss and bother there's been this week about that school where the children weren't allowed to go and see Romeo and Juliet. They should have been taken to see Two Gentlemen of Verona. Paul Collins lives in Surrey. He says, have a look at the school here. He sent us a picture of it, St Andrew's C of E First and Middle School. Strictly out of bounds to children. Mind you, life is getting a bit dangerous these days, even in the shops. Marion Godley lives in Ipswich, and there's a shop there with a customer stripping service. I once saw a sign that said trousers slashed.
I once saw a cleaning firm that said, drop your trousers here.
Oh.
The trouble was, someone did. They got arrested. We'd like to pass a quick warning on to you now. It was actually passed to us by Tina Knock, who lives in Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire. She's got a really gorgeous 14-month-old son called Joshua. She rang us and said...
Please tell people how dangerous dishwasher powder can be. I always thought it was pretty harmless, like soap powder, but I was wrong.
She told us that about 3 weeks ago, she and Joshua were together in the kitchen getting the tea, and Joshua got hold of this plastic bottle of dishwashing powder called Finish, and he was shaking it like this because he liked the noise, she told us.
I took my eyes off him for a second and suddenly he started crying. He'd somehow got the lid off the bottle and tipped some of the powder into his mouth. I rushed him to the sink and washed his mouth out. Meanwhile, I shouted at my son Matthew, who's 14, to read what it said on the label.
Well, it's not very clear, but it does have a warning: caution, corrosive, contains sodium silicate, causes burns, avoid contact with skin and eyes. Tina said...
It says if it touches the skin, you have to wash it off immediately. If you swallow it, drink milk or water and seek medical advice immediately. By this time, Joshua's mouth was terribly swollen, so my husband Steve drove us to the nearest hospital, Stoke Mandeville.
They were taken to the accident and emergency unit at once, and the doctor there went away to ring the poisons unit at Guy's Hospital. Tina told us...
Guy said the powder was very caustic and Joshua should be kept in for observation. They didn't know how much more his mouth would swell and it might block his airways.
Well, that evening, Tina ran a bath for Joshua in the hospital. She told us...
I started to undress him. The doctors hadn't done that when we'd arrived. And then I suddenly saw, under his nappy, a horrible burn. I went screaming back to the doctor. She said we should bathe it in cool water. The burn had gone through all the layers of his skin and his nerve endings. They'd been killed too, which is why he wasn't in pain. He'd had to have an operation. They had to cut the burn out, and they say he'll be left with a scar.
It seems that what had happened was he'd got the lid off this and tipped some of the dishwasher powder down his body. Just a few grains had dropped into his nappy. Tina said...
Only a very tiny amount of the powder, but it had reacted with the moisture in his nappy, which is why the burn was so serious. There's a special symbol on the label of the bottle, which I now know means it's corrosive.
Did you know what that means? It's on all the dishwasher powders that contain these silicates, either that or this cross, which means it's an irritant. And the lids of these are supposed to be childproof, or at least child-resistant. But it's terribly easy just to close that without the final click, and then the lid just twists off.
And this one hardly clicks at all. It just untwists. We spoke to the poisons unit at Guy's Hospital. They told us that dishwasher powder is the most dangerous kitchen product because nearly all of them contain sodium silicate, and it's the sodium silicate that's caustic. They get nearly 300 cases a year referred to them, and most of them are children.
So it is worth remembering, as Tina Knock told us.
Dishwasher powder is not just a soap powder. It can really hurt children like my Joshua. I know families where the toddlers help stack the dishwasher and fill up the powder. I just hope they never have to go through the worry and pain that we've been through.
We hope so too. Meanwhile, Wendy's been looking at some more consumer complaints.
Yes. Do you know BT has a special fault reception centre? I know that because Mr. B.J. Fletcher got in touch with him because his phone went wrong so it wouldn't ring. He told BT and they wrote back, "We have tried to telephone you to confirm this, but without success." You get much better service from the Daily Telegraph, though. You know the story about Mrs. Bobbitt, who was on trial for cutting off her husband's accoutrements? Well, she was acquitted, and he did get custody. Anyway, the Telegraph reported that story, and on the same page, they put a special reader's offer for a knife sharpener.
Well, we've got another story now which proves how dangerous it is to park your car. In Scotland, you come back and find a fence and an ambulance. Well, in Maastricht, you really can't believe what happened to Marion Silverstone.
She was there on holiday with her son Mark. Now, I'm unclear why exactly they picked Maastricht, since there was a time when the word alone was enough to cause loud snores and cries of, "Oh no, spare us, Maastricht!" Anyway, the Silverstones decided it would be an exciting place to have a family holiday.
So that's what they did 2 weeks ago. They parked their car carefully, nice residential street, no yellow lines, no warning signs, behind another car also parked there, and they locked it. Then they went to the bus stop 20 yards away, waited there 10 minutes, and when the bus came, they climbed onto it. They went into town, stayed there for 4 hours, shopping and sightseeing. They had a really good time.
When they came back, the Dutch army had blown up their car. A special Dutch bomb squad had flown in by helicopter, evacuated 25 families. There were policemen, police cars, blue flashing lights and spotlights. Well, you see, they'd parked near the home of a 4-star British general from NATO. And in the back of the car, they'd left a box of cassettes of the best of Barry Manilow. Well, you can understand it, can't you? So, naturally, the police thought it was a bomb and blew it up.
Oddly enough, they blew the doors off the car, utterly destroyed the central pillar, but the Barry Manilow tapes were left completely untouched.
The Dutch police said, don't worry, they'd mend it in a couple of days. Well, that was on January the 5th, and it still hasn't arrived.
So we rang them. They said, don't worry, it'll be ready in a couple of days, and then it'll go like a bomb.
Or a banger.
Last year, you may remember, we talked about the fact that the Department of Health doesn't always give people proper information about an illness, say like meningitis, so that people can spot the symptoms. Other countries do, like Norway. This week we heard about another, almost unknown illness people could be warned about, and pregnant mothers especially should be protected from. That's why Trudy Hill, who lives in Sudbury, asked us to tell her story. She said,
in 1983, I was pregnant with our first son, Simon. At about 5.5 months, I began to feel quite ill. It felt like flu, and I was very tired. My doctor just fobbed me off. I'd had 2 miscarriages before Simon, and I think he thought I was just paranoid. Anyway, I knew there was something wrong because I felt ill all the last few months.
when Simon was actually born, he had hydrocephalus, that's water on the brain, and the hospital took him straight away to the special care baby unit, where he had a blood test. Trudy told us,
They told me they feared something was wrong, but I didn't panic. Well, ever since I started to get those flu symptoms, I'd felt things weren't right. But when I saw Simon, it was love at first sight. It took some days for the test to come through, and then they told me it was toxoplasmosis.
how serious is that?
Well, the effects can be extremely serious. It caused Simon's hydrocephalus, and he's blind, and he has cerebral palsy. They've drained the liquid from his head, but he's physically completely dependent. He's 11, but it's as if he's still a baby. He can't feed himself or walk. But mentally, he's very bright, and his hearing's very good, sometimes too good.
I haven't ever heard of toxoplasmosis.
Well, most people haven't, and that's what frightens me. In Britain, 600 children a year are born with it. Other European countries, France, Spain, Portugal, Belgium, they all give pregnant women a blood test and screen them for it. So why don't we?
Perhaps to save money.
But think of the cost of having to look after a disabled child. I mean, special education isn't cheap. Simon goes to a special school literally 2 minutes up the road. I work there, and we both love every minute of it. But I simply don't understand why the Department of Health doesn't give people proper information and make sure we have blood tests to screen for it.
How do you catch it? Is it a virus?
No, it's not. It's a parasite, and you can catch it from used cat litter or raw or undercooked meat, unpasteurised goat's milk, unwashed fruit or vegetables. And lots of people have had it, but it's only dangerous if you're pregnant. Babies can seem quite normal at birth, but then the effects can come out years later.
Which is what happened to David Bowen, who lives in Newcastle. He told us,
20 years ago, when I was about 19, I woke one morning and found that I had blurred vision in my left eye, like looking through the bottom of a bottle. After a few days, it cleared up, so I didn't think anything about it. I became a cameraman working for Tyne Tees Television, so it was a disaster when my sight began to fail again in my left eye. It's like a black hole in my vision and no peripheral vision at all, so I had to give up my job.
and was that toxoplasmosis?
Yes, they gave me a blood test when I was 24 and it was positive. I find the ignorance generally, and the ignorance even in the medical world, is incredible. I once had to explain my condition to a nurse who'd never heard of it. People really should be warned about toxoplasmosis. It's too late for me, but other babies could be protected from losing their sight and other serious disabilities.
Because the wonderful news is that even if you do catch it while you're pregnant, if it is diagnosed properly, the baby can be protected if a mother is given a course of antibiotics, which of course makes it all the more extraordinary that pregnant women aren't screened to make sure this damage isn't done. Jackie Clark lives in Sidcup in Kent. She told us,
I lost my first baby. They said at the time one of the possible reasons was toxoplasmosis. As it turned out, the blood tests were negative, but at least that meant I'd heard of it. So when I discovered I was pregnant again, I asked for a blood test. The hospital told me it was positive, but to confirm it, they said I'd have to be tested again. Well, I had 3 weeks of terrible worry with no information, not even in the textbooks I found in the library.
So you had no help at all?
Well, actually, I did find help. It was from the Toxoplasmosis Trust, and they sent me their leaflet telling me the facts about it, how common it is, and about the tests. It also talks about the treatment with antibiotics, which reduces the risk to your baby by 60 to 70%.
We will give you the number of a special helpline run by the Trust in a moment. Jackie told us.
At last, I got the results of the second test. They were positive too, so I went to a consultant who told me either I could have a termination, I think my face said it all when he suggested that, or the antibiotics and then another test on the umbilical cord to see if my baby had been affected. Well, I started taking the antibiotics that afternoon.
Thankfully, when they did test the cord, the results were clear. No damage to the baby, although those results didn't get through until 8 weeks before he was born, which is very, very late. Jackie told us.
Callum is 9 months old now and he seems absolutely fine, although he still has a blood test every other month and he won't be officially clear until he's a year old. But I shudder to think what could have happened if I hadn't known about it and if I hadn't had the treatment. I'm now a counsellor for the Trust, and women ring me up and I try to help them the way the Trust helped me.
Dr. Roy McGregor is one of the Trust's advisors, so we asked him why the Department of Health doesn't screen all pregnant mothers here the way other European countries do. He said,
"It's a crazy situation. I believe toxoplasmosis is a bigger problem now than rubella, German measles. We have that disease now properly screened. Girls are immunised. It's much more under control. To have a situation in this country when we know at least 600 babies are born with toxoplasmosis a year, 10% of them will be seriously affected, the other 90% will develop problems of some kind with their sight, is disgraceful."
Well, it certainly does seem to be. We spoke to the Department of Health. They told us.
A nationwide screening programme is not appropriate at the present time. However, the situation is being monitored by the Public Health Laboratory Service, who are conducting a nationwide survey into toxoplasmosis in pregnancy.
So for the moment, our advice has to be, if you're pregnant and you want to be tested, ask for the test. If then you're told you're fussing unnecessarily, say the French and the Portuguese certainly don't think so.
And if you'd like more information, you can phone 0891 44 44 45. The lines will be open until midnight on Sunday. Calls cost 36 pence per minute. Or you can write to the Toxoplasmosis Trust. That's 61 to 71 Collier Street, London, N1 9BE.
Now we have some news for you about one of last week's stories.
Because we've had the most tremendous response to the story we told you about Jimmy Catchpole's stables in the East End of London. Well, now, we're not, as you know, a political programme, but in this case, the fact is that 4 Liberal Democrat councillors in Stepney have decided that Jimmy and his horses and all the other animals have to be evicted, which means the horses, some of them, may have to be put down, and local children will be deprived of the chance to ride and look after them. And that matters a lot to them because Stepney is really a bit of a concrete jungle.
These are the stables. According to the local vet and the RSPCA, the horses here are beautifully looked after. And when Stepney Council first said they had to be evicted, hundreds of local families demonstrated to try and make the council change their minds. Clearly it didn't work. So our newest recruit, Killjoy, went to the council meeting to express the local families' views there. Well, what happened this week as a result of all that, Gavs?
Well, this week, some of the council's officers came to see us. They told us they owned the land, they never said Jimmy could stay forever, and they showed us a plan of the formal ornamental garden for old people that they want to put there where the stables are now, which is just there. They've done a survey too, and 274 local people said they liked the plan for the formal garden.
But we said, did that survey mention the stable and the fact that the stable would be here, which would mean that they'd have to evict all the horses and Jimmy's stuff to make way for the garden?
Well, the answer is that they didn't. They didn't mention the stable at all.
But Jimmy himself added a note to the plan showing where Jimmy's stables are and sent the survey out again. And the result is completely different on this survey. Now, we've got here more than 550 people said they'd prefer his stables to the formal gardens, with such comments as, "It will break my children's heart if you take the stables away from them. My son uses the facilities provided by Jimmy's stables as a therapeutic aspect of rehabilitation. Unfortunately, my son has been disabled as a result of a road traffic accident. And as an OAP, it is a treat for my grandchildren who live locally to see their happy faces when they have a ride on the ponies. Please keep this facility open for the children."
We were able, we think, to make the point to the Mayor of Tower Hamlets, Councillor Snooks, that these are not rich children with their own ponies. These are children who can never afford to ride or look after horses without Jimmy's stable there. But of course, if they stayed there and they could ride round this lovely new park on the plans, it would surely be a very pleasant sight for any old people in the park, at least as pleasant and as ornamental as a formal garden.
And some of the young people have told me that the time they spent so happily in the stables, they would otherwise have spent hanging around on street corners getting into trouble. And quite frankly, they say it's that kept them out of trouble.
Of course, the local council elections are in May. There is still just time for these councillors to change their minds. But once the stables are destroyed and the horses are put down, there won't be. Right now there is. As one child who filled out the survey said,
"I'll miss the animals too much. Please don't let them go. I take food and feed them every day. The stables are my life."
Let's hope it can be saved, even at the last minute. Wendy?
It's tough being a woman these days, especially in Burnsall in Yorkshire. Peggy Burns and Michael Armitage found proof that we're really expected to rough it there. They say the ladies are a very public convenience. Mind you, they're even odder in France. Bob Stroud from Aberdeen bought a French jigsaw and then read the instructions. Turn the puzzle over, mix the powder with 7 tablespoons of water, stirring carefully. Then spread the paste over the backside. What you might call a sticky end.
You might indeed. As you know, we're always thrilled to get letters from you. As you also know, we have to apologise for the fact we can't reply to them all because we get so many. But everybody gets so many letters these days. That's why we're also delighted to welcome Barry Parkinson, who lives in Milton Keynes in Buckinghamshire, but is here tonight.
Right.
Thank you so much, Barry, for joining us. Now, you've done a special exercise monitoring all the junk mail, the unsolicited letters you've got in a year. Can you tell us how many you've had in total?
We've had a staggering of 238 items of junk mail and over 350 leaflets.
Well, we've got them here, piled on the mat, and we're going to send the rest of them through the flap as we discuss them. There was one particular one that annoyed you. Tell us why.
Yes, one that caused me great concern was from the Chiltern Hospital.
And why did that annoy you?
They invited me to have my eyes assessed at a cost of £900 per eye.
Gosh.
£900, with a view to have laser surgery if necessary.
So they knew that you have sight that needs glasses?
That's right, yes.
Where would
and that
they have got-
information must, of course, have come from my optician. So I believe that information that I thought to be confidential is being passed on through professionals to these organisations.
And you find all this an invasion, really, do you?
I get annoyed at a lot of the junk mail we receive, yes.
You have calculated how much... It's great, isn't it? Flapping away here. You've calculated how this paper could have been better used.
Well, if we convert all the mail one receives in a year to one sheet of paper, we could decorate the interior of 7 semi-detached houses. But a better use, of course, is to make it to a width of 4 inches, the width of a toilet roll. That would stretch for 5 miles and be a suitable use for most of it.
Certainly would. But we do have a bit of good news for you tonight, Barry, and any other viewers that agree with you, because this organisation, the Mailing Preference Service, is a free public service, which says that they'll stop all this junk mail being sent to you if it's sent to you by name. They can't do anything about stuff addressed to... It's still coming through this flap, you know, through the occupier or the householder. Their address is Mailing Preference Service, Free Post 22, London W1E7EZ. So thank you, Barry. And I'm afraid we still haven't
Esther.
reached the end of this 5-mile toilet roll, but if we can ask the postman to stop now, I'm afraid this excellent service isn't... Thanks very much, that's enough, thank you. Better be polite, they'll throw the sack through it. And none of that will help you, Craig, will it? Explain why, Kevin.
Well, I'm afraid it can't help, because that giant heap of the 5-mile-long toilet roll is nothing compared with the tons of post Craig Shergold has received over the last 5 years. And Craig's here tonight. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening, Kev.
How are you?
Not bad.
And it's actually a miracle Craig's here, because in 1989, you may remember, Craig had a serious brain tumour. Now, his mum Marion noticed how his Get Well cards cheered him up, and she started the most amazing challenge to get Craig into the Guinness Book of Records for receiving more Get Well cards than anyone else in the world. And he made it. Now, how many was the official record, Craig?
Well, in the book it's only 33 million, but by now we must have over 150 million.
150 million. And the best news of that was that among the Get Well cards was one from America, telling him about a doctor there who was pioneering a new treatment, and an American businessman, John Kluge, wanted to pay for Craig's treatment and all the travel expenses. And as we can see, the treatment worked, which is brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
Magic.
Well, they need your help again because the cards haven't stopped coming. Only now, some people have got the impression that Craig wants either doctor's letterheads or business cards, and he doesn't. He's got all the get well cards, he's got the world record, but still, sacks of business cards are arriving. So much so that I went to his home last week in Carshalton in Surrey to find the 8 daily sacks of mail arriving. Craig gets so much post now, they've given him his own sorting box in the post office, and the trouble is, he doesn't want them.
Pack of 100. Pack of 100.
See, look at the work they go to.
Pack of 100.
Thank you for sending me all the get well cards, but please, please don't send me no more business cards. I've had it with them. I'm well, I'm happy, I'm feeling great. Please don't send any more. I'm in the Guinness Book of Records. I don't need them. Thank you, but no thank you.
Well, good old Craig. Well done, mate. As you can see, with the help of the rest of my little helpers here, this is just 1 week's post. Now, can you imagine having this amount of post coming through your door every single week? So, as you can imagine, the things just got completely out of hand, and it's quite understandable to see now why the Share Golds have had enough. Because the trouble is, their own post gets all mixed up with the business cards, doesn't it, Mary?
Oh, it's murder, yeah. We lose hospital appointments, gas bills, they cut the phone off, wedding invitations. The wedding's long gone and we open it, you know.
Luckily, people are sympathetic, but we've had an idea. To stop this, why don't we all start a backwards chain letter? If you've had a letter from anyone asking for a letterhead or a business card for Craig, although sometimes it's called Craig Richard or Craig Shepherd or something similar, please write back to all the people in the chain explaining that Craig doesn't want any more. And ask them all to pass the information back down the chain, because that's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah, all I want now is to live a happy, normal life.
Any final message for the viewers, Craig?
Yeah, the mission is over. Mission accomplished. I'm in the Guinness Book of Records. No more cards, please.
Craig Shepherd.
Let's hope that's worked for you. Adrian has met an extraordinary taxi driver in Blackpool this week. Tell us.
Have indeed, but it's not his taxi that's extraordinary, it's his brain. He set himself the challenge of memorising 20,000 phone numbers out of the Blackpool phone book, and he's already more than halfway there. Well, I couldn't believe it myself, so I went to Blackpool to meet Tom Morton and test his extraordinary brain.
OK, how about, let me see, the Ruskin Hotel.
Albert Road, 2 for 063 and 23571.
Yes, the San Jose Hotel.
Southport, the number you require, the code is 0704, the number 530370.
All right, give me 2 more. The Viking Hotel.
48411.
Correct. Oh dear me, this is proving impossible to catch here. York House Hotel, 62 Dixon Road, Blackpool.
26725.
Oh, you're correct.
My job as a taxi driver, I drive a big bomber for red cams. I drive around Blackpool, and this is a perfect job because one, it gives you time to study, but 2, as you're driving around the streets in Blackpool, it gives you a chance to memorise as you're driving about, because when you see all the hotels, you're going by, you're rattling off the phone numbers as you're going down the street. So it's a perfect job for this ambitious exercise.
All right. So how long do you spend each day learning numbers?
Every minute I can. Every spare minute I can put on, even if I'm watching a documentary or something. Like, I would already watch like an education thing, but I would switch off every opportunity, just read it non-stop. If I'm driving my taxi, I'm reading the phone book while I'm at the traffic lights. When I park up in a rank, I'm reading the phone book. It's very, very unnatural, a lot of people say. Like, you know.
Well, that was my next question. I mean, how on earth can you open the telephone directory and think, I'm just about to go to sleep, carpet and upholstery, and then you read Blackpool Cleaning Services of Eddleston Road.
Yeah, 290-550.
Right.
That's 2 Joe 90s with 550p coins on a unicycle, putting them into a gas meter. And that's a funny story in its own, because it sticks in your mind.
All right, well, so what image did you have for Leighton Funerals, 301, 306?
Well, one of our state radio stations is 301, Red Rose Radio. So I see 301, I see a radio station, I see all these undertakers getting out of the coffins and they're all jiving because there's a radio station. And then 36 is Linda Lasardi, so 306 would Linda Lasardi being hit over the head by a beach ball, not as a beach ball. So I see the radio station, all the undertakers in the coffins and Linda Lasardi hitting the head with a beach ball.
All right, let's put you to the test with directory inquiries. Hello there. I'd like the telephone number, please, for Snappy Tomato Pizza, 240 Whitegate Drive, and that's Blackpool, please.
Blackpool 792
792
779.
779. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye. You were way ahead of them.
So we decided to put Tom's skill to the test. We took him to face the might of British Telecom.
What TWS stands for?
Jill, meet Tom.
Hello, Jill. How you doing?
Tom.
Pleased to meet you.
Tom, Jill. Jill is our representative from BT. How many calls do you take each day?
Personally, between 1,000 and 1,200, 1,300.
And what about this unit here?
Up to 45,000 a day.
So you're fairly nimble.
Fairly.
In which case, let the challenge begin.
Good afternoon, directory. Which name, please?
It's Lucy's Cots and Carriages, please, in Blackpool.
Lucy's Cots and Carriages in Blackpool, thank you. The number you require is 0253 24101.
Oh, right, thanks so much. There is another number I want, actually. It's a garden centre.
To which name, please?
Well, it's called Bagley's.
It's in Bagley or it's in Blackpool?
It's in Blackpool, actually, and it's called Bagley's. Bagley.
Thank you. The number is 0253
Yes.
762
762
981.
Thank you, that's
Thank
sweet.
you.
That's very fun. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
1-0, Tom.
That's the fax number, give you, sorry.
Good afternoon, directory. Which name, please?
Good afternoon. I'd like an estate agent, please. Name of Escott Bamber.
Escott Bamber.
E-S-C-O-T-T and Bamber.
Thank you. The number is Blackpool 28982.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. It's very good.
Well, Tom, it even looks like you've beaten the machines.
Okay, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
same
you very
again.
much.
Pleased
I'll
to
see you
meet
again. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Genuinely, he really did that genuinely.
Oh, he was incredible. But the really amazing thing is that when we came out of that building, he'd forgotten where he parked his car.
And finally, Wendy.
And finally, Esther, Mrs. Patchett from West Yorkshire sent me some loo paper with the most poetic name. It is called Happy End.
Brings us to the end of the show. Thank you very much, Wendy, for joining us this evening.
Thank you for asking me.
It's been lovely. Please join us next week. Till then, from all of us, good night.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.